Asia Tomorrow, brought to you by DBS, Living, Breathing Asia.
Some say Asia's economic success has been built on trade, and a key reason why it managed to remain the world's growth engine despite the global financial crisis. But as the U.S. and Europe recover their trade prowess, Asia has adapted to become more than just an export machine. Martin Sung reports.
Home to the world's second and third largest economies, China and Japan, Asia has long been a trading power to be reckoned with. With total exports and imports of more than $4 trillion, China is now the top global trading nation, surpassing even the U.S. And this powerhouse is driving trade in Asia.
Trade in this region is growing faster than in the rest of the world. And also, it's not just a question of manufactured trade. More and more in the region, you're getting into knowledge-based, and you're going more into the services.
Besides China, another much talked about driver of growing regional trade is the ASEAN Economic Community, or the AEC. It is the bloc's grand vision for a single market and production base, and a way to deepen ASEAN's export basket. But for all its promise, the AEC is still very much a work in progress.
We don't think that that all of the targets and objectives for 2015 will be met by 2015.
The single market won't be like a big bang single market. There'll be a process.
I think an AEC is really a journey as opposed to a destination in 2015.
Integration will not all happen at the same time when the clock strikes 12 on December 31st, 2015, because of the region's political and economic complexities.
Look, it's not going to be perfect, but I never thought this would happen in my lifetime, an ASEAN Economic Community, so it's a great step. I think there's still a disconnect between government officials and the private sector. I think the key is implementation, but hey, we're on the runway. As long as people communicate and engage, I think the future holds well.
The Southeast Asian nations are not just stopping at one pact, there are other trade agreements also in the works, like the 12-member Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, which includes 3 Southeast Asian nations and accounts for nearly 40% of world GDP. There are also trade negotiations that involve ASEAN and 6 of its top trading partners in the region, including China.
All the different trade agreements, whether it's TPP, AEC, and even the FTAs, all are headed towards one direction. As long as the economic development of each country is facilitated, I think it's the good and right thing to do.
Trade negotiations are known to drag, and the last mile is often the toughest. But for Asian countries, dunking into the alphabet soup of trade pacts is likely to prove a good meal ticket for the future. Martin Sung, CNBC.
Now, one of the key hot button issues when it comes to global trade, the Chinese currency, the yuan. Today, we're asking if China has done enough to placate its detractors, especially in the United States. And we want to be hearing from you, so go to our website, cnbc.com. Vote to pick one of the answers that you see right there on your screen. Okay, let's get back to our guests. Liz Ann Saunders of Charles Schwab, overseeing about $2.3 trillion in assets. Liz, and what's your feeling right now on what's happening in this part of the world, in the Asia Pacific? We got the flash PMI numbers from China yesterday. Initially a rally, but then we pulled back, in China shares, as you saw.
Yeah, PMI is, I guess, best in 7 months, which was the opposite of what we saw out of Europe, where it was actually the worst in 6 months. So you are seeing divergences globally in terms of the economy. We had a negative view on emerging markets broadly, and specifically China, until the latter part of last year, and then we actually moved to a positive view on China, being a believer in the reforms that were announced, that we were probably at some sort of an inflection point in terms of the economic data. We've always been in the soft landing camp, not in the hard landing camp, and feel like the reforms are the right thing, maybe to kind of shift the trajectory a little bit going forward.
I'm just wondering what investors are saying in the U.S. about that, because I feel like the sentiment is so bearish there.
Well,
they always question the numbers.
Which is one of the reasons for the optimism, because the extreme of bearish sentiment is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, so are they even interested in buying in China?
They're interested more broadly in emerging markets. What we find is U.S. investors are not yet either in a position to, because of lack of resources, or maybe don't have the willingness to look at emerging markets beyond just as an index. And that's one of the things we think you want to be more of a differentiator, and that within the emerging markets index, the spread between what we think will be the best performing areas and the worst performing is going to be particularly wide. And figuring out how to take that more active approach and focus in on those areas that will do well, I think probably is a better approach than just taking a passive emerging markets approach.
Right, okay, so I see. So it's more of an emerging markets, like a wider bet rather than stock or country specific sort of pick.
If you can take a more active approach and the managers say that you choose has success in figuring out which are going to be the best markets, you're probably better off doing it that way than just purely buying the index.
Okay. All right, Liz Ann, so you're going to stick around. We're going to talk more about the frontier space maybe, as we will be talking about Vietnam after this break. And Liz Ann Saunders of Charles Schwab will be staying with us. So coming up after this break, we have Vietnam's largest textile maker releasing its prospectus for its July IPO. Get your details of this coming your way next.
Asia Tomorrow, brought to you by DBS, Living Breathing Asia. DBS Asian Insights.
Today I'm speaking with DBS Asian Insights experts about the game changers that will shape the Asia of tomorrow. Dave, Asia itself is in a bit of a game-changing era. How is the landscape changing?
Asia's growing fast. Everybody knows that. The newest thing is that Asia is now big enough to matter. It is big enough to create its own demand, to drive its own growth, and indeed to drive global growth.
So Asia is no longer dependent on the US. Would you say that the US is now dependent on Asia?
In the 5 years since Lehman Brothers collapsed, right, the US has basically gone nowhere. Japan has basically gone nowhere. Europe has actually shrunk a little bit. Asia in that 5-year time frame has put 1.25 Germanys on the map right here in Asia. Asia is going to put out 3 Eurozones on the map in the next 25 years. Take out your map of the world, look at Europe, multiply it by 3, and plop that down on top of Asia somewhere. That's what the world's economic map is going to look like in 25 years.
Game changers shaping the Asia of tomorrow. DBS, Living Breathing Asia.